Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with Deb Tauber, a nurse educator and founder of Innovative Sim Solutions. Deb shares how she uses medical simulation and VR to train healthcare providers for rare but high-risk situations, such as postpartum emergencies and airway management. We dig into how simulation boosts patient safety, what it takes to get accredited in this space, and how tech is changing how we teach clinical care.
Deb Tauber, welcome. Could you please tell us what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor, Scott, first of all. So I'm a nurse by trade, and I have a company called Innovative Sim Solutions. And we have three things that we do. The first one is we have a free podcast called The Sim Cafe, where we interview guests from around the globe. We actually have over 100,000 downloads in 94 countries worldwide. So the guests that we meet are just fascinating, and they tell their story about the history of medical simulation. The second thing that the company does is we have courses online on simulation and telehealth. And the third thing is I do some consulting. So if you're a company, a school, a hospital, or any kind of a medical program that's looking to get into medical simulation, I can help you make decisions, how to get your staff up and getting going on it. You know, if you're going to go into augmented or virtual reality, I can help you with that as well.
So let's drill into that just a bit. So, the last time we spoke, I had kind of likened what you do to the pilot, right? Who, she may, in the course of her, 50,000 hours of being a pilot, there may be this one thing that happens, one in a million shot, but she's practiced it so many times that she doesn't have to think about it, right? And I'm assuming that's a similar kind of thing, in the kind of VR or the simulation for medicine. Is that you said earlier that we talked that patient safety is number one, right? This is making people safer because the nurses or doctors, they don't have to think, they've already done it a million times. Can you kind of speak on that a bit?
Absolutely, yeah. So with my background of working in emergency medicine for 25 years, I was able to witness firsthand, there's a lot of, just like in aviation, there's a lot of high risk, low frequency events. And so when I was practicing, we would practice them in, it was called Skills Day. So fast forward to when I got introduced to simulation, I realized that what we were doing was actually simulation by looking at these things that you could, practice on, but not have to practice during the time that you're taking care of a patient. So stuff like chest tubes, central line insertions, intubations, any of these things that are, high risk, low frequency. And you could do them in simulation and get, like you said, the opportunity to practice.
Yeah, we much rather practice on in the VR world, right, than the actual humans and such. How the heck? Okay, so you were a nurse for 25 years, and you were seeing these kind of high risk, low frequency things happening. And then when did it become obvious that simulation was the way to go? I mean, or is this kind of rule? Who did you meet, or how did you come to this conclusion?
No, great question, Scott. Thanks. So I was, like I said, I worked in the hospital level 1 trauma center, and my position was eliminated at the hospital. It was a time when they were letting go of educators, and I was a clinical educator. So I went around looking for something to do, and my daughter was going to a school. Can I say the name of the school or no?
Of course.
Yeah, okay. It's called Chamberlain University now. Big school of nursing. And they hired me, and they brought me into, I was really practiced a lot with pediatrics. I had 4 kids. So during my time in the ER, they were like, Tauber, get in there. You're good with kids. So, I got good with children. And so they bring me into the school, and they give me this doll. It's like the size of a kid. And and they say, "Well, you're good with kids. Go ahead and make a simulation." And I'm like, "No, this isn't what I do." But I was able to see what they were doing in simulation and really understand that using simulation for learning helps people to really understand by practicing.
Now, the new one that you made, so VR is kind of the new way of doing this, right? This kind of this helmet that simulates the world, and it sounds like you were doing basically kind of a training video to simulate, I don't know, the choking of a child, or whatever, intubation of a child, or whatever. Does that sound about right? And you do
Well, when I was
start at some point, right?
2010, when I actually got into simulation, I would say that the simulated environment then was just kind of taking off. People were resistant to, what we're going to use these big dolls for training. How are we going to do this? And we started to use it and just to see like the faculty members, how they learned to adapt to it. At first, they were really resistant. And then they would start to see one of the things that they measure in nursing school is NCLEX test results. So the teachers were actually able to see that when the students learned using simulation, the test results scores were on the rise. And obviously, if that's your metric that you're trying to meet, that's going to be a natural sale. Like you're not going to need to do much because that's the holy grail for the instructors is getting those scores higher.
Got a real world example of this. So So back in 1,000 million years ago, when I was taking my driver's course in Texas, they make you watch something called Blood on the Highway. And what it is you're in this trailer and you've got a fake steering wheel and a fake and a fake, kind of key and all the stuff's there. And you watch this god awful. You drive along. You're supposed to like simulate along the way. And one of the things was, someone darts out in front of you and and you stop real quick, right? Simulate, right?
Right.
It actually saved someone's life because that happened to me and all that came back at one time. And this little girl came across the street. I literally got my driver's license a week earlier and I was kind of freaking out still from that film and all the things I had kind of run through my mind. I don't want to hurt anybody. And the thing happened and I didn't hit her, obviously. And
Right.
so that's the closest that I can kind of draw from my own experience. I mean, I'm imagining you have other stories like that from people you've trained that said, oh my God, I would have never been ready for this thing that had happened unless I would have taken the simulation. Can we speak about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. That is kind of the number one thing that comes back when people have experienced simulation. They'll come back to you and say, yeah, especially if you think about some of the obstetric emergencies. I'm sure you've heard about that on the news. That there's populations of mothers and babies dying because some of these high risk, low frequency events are not different populations have not been educated on how to care for things like postpartum hemorrhage, which is bleeding during a pregnancy, or about, preeclampsia, some of these things. So we practice all of these in simulation. And so people know what they're looking for.
So you're saying you're training the mothers on this, right? So that because I would imagine you could tell them all day long what to look for, but until they actually
Well, the
that's interesting.
healthcare providers. So when the
Oh, okay.
healthcare providers are in that emergency and they see, all this bleeding, they start to think, oh,
Right.
we've practiced this in simulation, or, shoulder dystocia, where the shoulder's coming first, how you turn that baby, and all the different emergencies in obstetrics that are, everyone likes to think that you just, catch them. But in all reality, there's times when, things are unforeseen, and learning to.
Imagine sometimes it's like the show House, right? He pulls some obscure disease out of nowhere that hasn't happened in 1,000 years. But this is almost the thing where like, oh my God, I had the simulation where the shoulder came out first, and I know, and it's like one of those 1 in 1,000 things that I mean, humans we're terrible at imagination sometimes, right? And the training, if it's boring or whatever, you can kind of see how they miss it. Where this is a little bit more hands on and it's visceral, I would imagine, right? Because you're
Right.
seeing the possibilities.
Right, right. You get to see all the things that could happen, and then you do them, and you're in a safe environment. But to a learner, there is a certain amount of stress and anxiety that goes along with it because you know your peers are looking at you, you know that your teachers are looking at you, the instructors. So it creates some stress, but if you can manage that stress, you can really learn from it. And there's several phases to a simulation. So there's the pre-briefing this would be a traditional simulation where you have the doll, the simulator, a pre-briefing where you talk about what you're going to see and what the case is going to be. And usually you get like time to study up for it. So you're kind of prepping for it. Then you actually do the simulated experience. And then after the experience, whatever it is, birth of a child, then everyone goes into another area and talks about what they experienced, how they felt, what they learned, what they would do, what they did well, what things they might have done differently if they get the opportunity to do it again. But a lot of learning occurs. I mean, it's just like anything else. When you experience something, much more learning takes place.
But I also would imagine that it's not just that, it's also because you know what to expect, like 1 in 1,000 shot, you don't flip out when it actually happens.
Correct.
Right, because it's the unknown, I guess, that makes humans freeze, right, and not kind of do their mental catalog of what they have to do. Okay, so what is your day to day? I mean, are you creating new simulations for people, or how does that exactly work? What is your business model exactly?
So my business model is more consulting. So, the three things, like I said, the podcast, might do an interview, might work with the client. There's an organization that will accredit your program. It's called the Society for Simulation in Healthcare. And so I serve as a reviewer for them. So if an organization is looking to become accredited, I can help them with their processes to make sure that they're prepared. And I consider myself kind of like a coach because it's such a journey to become accredited that I don't know if you've done anything like a marathon or triathlon in your life but if you haven't, sometimes you'll have a coach, and it's that when you get through that final, you get over it and you get to the end, it's a great, great accomplishment. So my clients feel very, very happy that they've done that. And it's very fun for me to do that with them.
So, how long? I mean, how many years have you been doing this type of consulting? Is it how long?
Since 2017. I
Oh,
opened the
okay.
company in 2017. Yeah.
And then COVID hits. You're like, oh, well, I guess we're remote now, right?
Right. I was blessed. I had a client in Hawaii right before COVID hit. So I got to go out there. And then when COVID hit, I started doing stuff virtually, and it's been helpful to do it.
You're not geographically bound. I talk to probably 2 to 4 entrepreneurs on a daily basis ish. Call that 15 20 per week. Call that 60 to 100 per month. And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that COVID changed everything for the positive. Because, the moment they realized they weren't stuck in a small geographic area, now they could, through Zoom, right? They could go after anybody in the world. They could hire anybody in the world too. But through geographic arbitrage, sometimes you could get employers a little cheaper in one area than the other, or you could maybe go after clients in California who are expecting to pay more to begin with, and it kind of opened up the world. Was that also kind of your?
Yeah, that's been my finding as well. And I mean, I think the other thing was, when I first started out with the podcast, and like I said, we've got, a great episodes, and these people that I would in my field in simulation, I would think, oh, how would I get to talk to them? But during COVID, I'd reach out and, hey, I know that you wrote this book or that book. Would you be interested in being interviewed on our podcast? And they're like, sure. And then they tell their story. And some of these stories to simulationists, which we are kind of a tribe, the stories are really interesting. Like these simulators, they actually, when they first came out with them, they were like $250,000 to buy one. So obviously not everyone could use it.
Right.
They couldn't afford it. And then the technology prices have come down so much that it's much more reasonable to purchase one of these simulators and to use it. And now some of it's taking away to the virtual reality where people are just doing stuff in the virtual world.
It's funny. You and I are in similar businesses in that, the podcast opened up all these doors that I didn't even know existed, right? Until I started doing it. And then you end up talking to a huge wide array of humans who have similar experiences. And it's just, you feel better every day. Every single day I learn something new where, when you're kind of going to an office and you're kind of hubbing it through for clientele, it's just a different world. And now this is our life. We,
Right.
and we could literally talk to the foremost experts in the entire world about some things. And, it's available to us. It was never available before. Yeah. It's
Right.
almost like COVID opened up this entire world that, and it was horrible. It absolutely was horrible. But that closing that one door and opening up a window, in that it opened up opportunity. I don't think people saw coming.
Well, I think especially with, the onset of virtual reality and using AI and, ChatGPT, all of those things that when I first started going to the conferences, they might have one kind of headset, this maybe being like 20, I don't know, 2014, 15, and you get into it and it was just like, really? And you go to a conference now, there's probably 30 vendors that have the virtual reality set up and, it's so much more realistic. And they're, getting things like haptic, which is, where you use your hands on it.
Yep.
Yeah, as well. So it's just moving so quickly that unfortunately, if you're resistant, you're going to be left behind.
So with that said, what is the future? Like, what do you see 10 years from now, 5 years from 50 years from now? What can your industry expect that you believe is coming?
Well, what I hope is coming is that these younger, faster, people that are using this technology as part of their life, these, 20 somethings, they're going to demand it in the workplace. And so people that have just said, well, we're not going to use it, we're not going to do that, are going to be left behind. And we're going to need to use these new things that are coming along. So I think it's going to take a while, but, it just like going from the flip phone to the, the regular phone. I mean, think about that transition on how long it took people to move.
No. Going from the house phone to a car phone, which was no one can afford, to a flip phone, like a Nokia 2130. Those things were bulletproof. You could use as weapons. They were so heavy. Battery life was like 2 days because they didn't do anything except for take calls. And now this is like integrated into our lives to the point where I know my wife's phone number and that's pretty much it. I don't even know my
Right.
son's. I've been trying to memorize it for a week now and I can't do it. It's my brain's mush. It's all been seeded to a phone. So
And
it is.
right. So think about how long that really took though, to come along. And it was insidious, right? It was just like all of a sudden now, if you lose your phone, you're screwed.
You just gave me a little bit of an anxiety attack just thinking about losing it. All my stuff's there, all my phone numbers are there. How do I do anything? We are living in a different world. Deb, I'm gonna end it right there. This is exactly what I wanted to accomplish, was kind of the where you came from and how you did it, but also where it's going. Where can we find you? Where's the best way of finding you?
I have a website
Okay.
called
I'll attach all that to the bottom of this podcast, in terms of your podcast, but also your website and all the things and all your contact information.
Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. Deb, it was awesome meeting you, and I guess we'll see you soon.